Right, Laura. Welcome. Hi, Scout. First one in. Well done. You're not a tardy guy. I just sent you a co-host invite, Laura, so let's try and get that sorted first of all. See if you're there. And while we're trying to do that, let me go down my timeline. Well, yeah, what? You're a co-host. Brilliant. Let me just shove that in the nest, actually, share to space. And let me go down my timeline and have a little look, see what we're going to talk about. There's a bit to talk about today. It wasn't a heavy news day. However, I'm basically going to go through my timeline, starting with the numbers as to what I'm going to talk about today. So Laura, let's just check your microphone, see if you're there.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Should we do a timestamp?
Oh yeah, timestamp. I forgot about that. Yeah, go on then.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Welcome to Tryzub Radio. Today is Tuesday, October 22nd, 2025, 8 p.m. in Kiev, 6 p.m. in the UK, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that is noting the differential that we haven't caught up to Daylight Savings Time yet. Thank you.
October 22nd, did you say?
I'm so sorry. I did, I believe, yeah. Because that's okay, October 28th. Thank you very much for checking that. Should I do it again just to get it straight?
No, it's good. I just found it. I was just like, really? Is it 22nd? I thought it was a bit more than that. But yeah, no, it was funny. I'm just chuckling away. I laugh at errors, especially my own. Otherwise, I don't have the right to laugh at anybody else's errors, basically. You kind of get the right to do that. So laugh at mine, heartily, basically, when I make them, please. To my face or to my ears, as it were, because I'm going to be laughing at yours and everybody else's. So that's kind of who I am, Laura. I hope you don't take offense there or anything. I doubt if you did take offense.
Oh no, I think it's critical, like absolutely laughing at ourselves, others, very good. It saves the world, I think.
It does. It's one of my rules. If people don't allow you to laugh at them, but laugh at you, that makes them a not very nice person, a hypocrite, basically. So I definitely allow people to laugh at me because that then obviously allows me to laugh at them. That's my rule. Right. So, anybody who's in yet, if you can up in the nest, I've bunged my version of the reminder tweet. Don't know if you know how to put one up there, if you've learned that, Laura, so people can retweet the space, get a few more people in. I kind of misread Vatnik Soup's message to me the other week saying I thought he was moving his slot on Volley Radio forward an hour. But actually, I reread it again, and I'm thinking, no, he's not having a space today, so there's no overlap today. Actually, I thought there was going to be maybe a slight overlap or something like that, but there isn't one. So that's good. No overlappy. That's excellent news. We don't really like overlaps. Sometimes they can't be helped, and sometimes, they can be helped. So I'm going to read through the numbers for you early birds who've got in. So this is from Defense of Ukraine. I normally wait for the English version to come out rather than the Ukrainian, so I just like retweeting it on try and do it every day. Although they didn't post it over the weekend, actually. Somebody must have been on holiday or something. And sometimes they're a little bit late posting the English version. The Ukrainian version comes out maybe an hour earlier, but I wait for the English one. And then I also post it usually on Blue Sky as well. Sometimes I forget, but I try and do that. That's basically the one thing I do on my Shaggy Blue Sky account is post that every day, and not much else really. And I've started retweeting that on the Tryzub account as well. So the Tryzub radio account is still suspended by Twitter. They're useless. It's been 10 days now. 2 appeals in. Actually got our Gmail account was suspended yesterday as well, which is odd. I've never seen that before. A few people I spoke to have never seen that before. But so I put an appeal there, and literally 12 hours later, that they'd reviewed my appeal and basically went, oh yeah, sorry, whoops, reinstated again. So the YouTube account is back up. although I can't get into it at the moment because of my password. Somebody's attempted to enter it multiple times, and I've got to wait a few hours, so that's a bit annoying. But anyway, we're here. So yeah, if you ever see a Tryzub Radio or unsuspend Tryzub Radio tweet, if you could retweet that to try and get Elmo to look at it. But I think the bots are just ignoring it, so I might have to go to plan B on that in a week or so. So the numbers, right then. So eliminated personnel, up to 130. Oh, sorry, not 113. Well, yeah, 1.1387 million. So that's up 1,060 from the day before. So that was the last 24-hour period. Over 1,000 orcs, ordinary Russian conscripts, as I call them, or ordinary Russian citizens, for people that don't like that nomenclature. 1,060 either dead or injured or basically off the battlefield. 6 tanks. Hang on a second. Is that 6? Is that a whole 6? That's quite a lot of tanks, actually. Well, it's not a lot of tanks, but it's a lot of tanks for recent months. Normally there's like none or 1 or 2 or something like that, but 6 is reasonably a few, actually. And that probably leaks into some of the armoured assaults they've been trying. We'll get into that a little bit later, probably about halfway through this 2-hour space, I reckon, or until David D fires his up. 28 armoured fighting vehicles were taken out. That's up to 23,508 now. 8 artillery systems. It's a little bit low. So over 34,000 now, but 8 is 8. That's good. Chinese lucky number, apparently. It's supposed to be my lucky number as well. But my lucky number is 5. Always has been. 2 MLRS, multi-launch rocket systems, 2 of those. No air defenses. Boo. 108 UAVs and 131 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 3 special equipment. Mockers does like special equipment, so she would have been happy with that, although from what I gather she was in the office today, and that's why there was no Volley Radio segment with her this morning. So this is the first one since for quite a while, pro-Ukrainian space. So yeah, maybe I should have I could have just been sitting around looking at the news actually all day. Anything you want to comment on with those numbers, Laura, or anybody? You can't see any requests at the moment. Everyone's just settling in with a popcorn, I guess. Anything, Laura? Or should I go on to the airport?
Still, and I know I don't mean to be redundant too, but the numbers are still shocking. We talked earlier about kind of digging into some of the numbers too, around how many people are still trapped in occupied territories, how many children, and I can add those later on too. But it's still, I think the numbers are important because it is, and some people it may resonate more with, but I mean more than 1 million Russians, and it's like if that was done in any other country, would that be acceptable? I think there's so many questions and so many things to bring up leaders. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the numbers got silly. I remember right at the start of the war, there was people like Thomas Steiner saying, "Oh, when it gets to 100,000, the Russians will just give up." And then we kind of got to 100,000. He went, 300,000. And then we got to 300,000, and then he stopped guessing, which is probably wise. So I mean, I kind of he was not alone in getting those figures, guessing those figures and getting them wrong. I think most people didn't realise that it gets to 1.1 million plus Russian casualties, but well, it has. So here we are, and they're 6 foot under. So it is what it is. Idiots is British understatement there. So drones overnight. This is from Tim White. If you're not, I've shoved it in the nest as well. This is from Tim White. If you're not following Tim White, give him a follow because he has been here every day. I've still never missed a single day of fact checking, analysis, and reporting. He says in his post from 12 hours ago. So I haven't fact checked that. I believe him. Send him a coffee if you can. I sent him one the other week. But he does a great job on his daily threads. They're great, great source of information. So that's why I've put his originating thread from today up in the nest, so you can have to scroll down and see all the news that he thinks is newsworthy. So just 38 drones were launched by Russia overnight, and quite a few of those after dawn this morning. 26 have been shot down. This was as of 10 hours ago, or stopped via EW, electronic warfare, which is a 68% success rate. And 12 strikes occurred in 4 different locations, as well as falling debris affected another location. So that's from the Air Force report. Sorry, I just had dinner just before I came on air, and I shouldn't do that because then I get a little bit of the hiccups, Laura, which isn't very good. I think I ate my dinner too quickly, which I shouldn't do. I should wait till afterwards, or eat it much earlier. So there we go. So that's the Air Force report and the numbers done. So they're out the way. It's Tuesday, Laura, all day, the 28th, just saying. Tuesday, the 28th of October. And what happens on Tuesdays, Laura?
Toonie Tuesday?
Bingo! Bingo, you got it in one. I just shared it up in the nest. So today is Toonie Tuesday, as is every Tuesday. So Toonie Tuesday today is trying to raise funds for teaming up with Angels of Donbass to support unmanned system, the system battalion of the 56th Motorized Brigade, holding the line in Kramatorsk. I'm reading this from their tweet, by the way, just in case you didn't know. So they're trying to raise 10.4, well, 10,400 euros, for a pickup truck and for a Matrice, 4T drone, critical tools for mobility and reconnaissance. So yeah, if you can go on that tweet, if you haven't done already, given your, toonie, as it were, Canadian word for two of something, like a $2 or £2, or two something decent rather than 2 kopecks, although 2 kopecks is better than no kopecks. Some they're calling it the shag now, Laura, in Ukraine rather than kopek, which cheered me up something rotten, actually, when they came out with that. Brilliant. So yeah, so that's up in the nest now. I think last time I looked, they were up to about, was it 3,000, 4,000, but I haven't looked for a few hours, so it'll probably get a big boost. This time of the day, this is when, what time is it? It's 11 minutes past 6 in the UK. So it's 11 minutes past 8 in Kyiv and all of Ukraine. And it's between those two, so either those times or between those two times in the rest of Europe. So people are popping off from work. A lot of people anyway, who do 9 to 5 jobs and stuff like that, popping off from work, probably listening to us on the way home. And in America, I think it's 2:00 in the afternoon there, isn't it? You haven't gone back yet, or forward, or whatever it is this year. I rely on my clocks to auto change the time rather than apart from my car doesn't do that. Obviously, I've got to go in. So occasionally an hour later or an hour earlier this time of year, or in the spring. So so it's 2:00, so kind of late lunchtime for the US. So people start delving into their pockets and listening a little bit. So hopefully you can support Toonie Tuesday on that one. So yes, there's that. Right, Laura. Anything from you? Because I'm just going to go through my timeline basically, because I found it quite interesting today. I find my timeline quite interesting. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on my timeline basically. Laura.
Yeah, you do terrific composites of the kind of the news and do kind of a great aggregate, I think, because I noticed a lot of yours, there was a lot of mixed information about the effect of the tariffs, which we really haven't covered, I don't think. And that, yeah, if I'd be interested in your analysis of that, because I'm still unclear on some of it also, and I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, I'll do the little bit of the economic stuff. I get sometimes I get a little bit annoyed with some of the commentary that I see online. For instance, basically people are thinking, or some people are thinking hyperbolically. So I kind of go in there a bit gently, not completely gently, and push back on it. So people use infinitives a lot, like the oil trade with China is over. The oil trade between Russia and India is over. Yeah, because of Trump's tariffs. Well, it's not. And this is, I'm just going to go straight into that one. Let me scroll up, because I had a little whinge, should we say. We call it a whinge. I had a little, there's this guy, what's his name? Carrillo. Where is he? I've got to scroll up quite a lot, on my timeline. So he's basically an ex-governor of the Bank of Ukraine or something like that. Where is he? Anyway, I can't find him now. No, I don't know where he is. Anyway, he's the ex-governor of the Bank of Ukraine. He's got a bit of a bee in his bonnet about President Zelensky. Whenever he mentions anything about Zelensky, it's always negative. And we'll get to that one in a little bit. In fact, I might as well go straight into that one. So there was a report. There was some pushback that I came across when I can find the bloody thing. Where am I? About a hang on, that's your post. That's Institute Studio War. Where is it? I've lost it. Oh, there he is. So there was a New York Times article out today from a journalist called Andrew Kramer, which basically said that there was trouble at mill at a company called what was it called? Firepoint. Now, Firepoint makes drones for Ukraine. It's a really kind of important drone manufacturer for Ukraine, and they did a bit of a hit piece on Firepoint. Saying that there was dodgy stuff going on there and stuff like that. And then there was, so basically this guy, Yuri Gudyimenko, who basically runs, the MOD's, the Ukrainian MOD's Civil Anti-Corruption Council, basically said today, a New York Times journalist, Andrew Kramer, simply lied about the MOD Civil Anti-Corruption Council, which I head. The council did not appeal to the Ukrainian parliament, rather, regarding Firepoint drones, as reported in the New York Times. So basically, the New York Times, or the New York Times, as I refer to it, on occasion, because sometimes it comes out with Russian lines, and this is one of them, basically, trying to stir up trouble, between Firepoint and basically everybody. Yeah, so he goes on to say the council does not have a habit or tradition of appealing to Parliament. Yeah, when we gather sufficient evidence, we pass it directly to law enforcement agencies. For instance, the Pavlograd chemical plant case. So basically, they're going to follow procedures. They're not going to go running to Parliament and moaning. And he heads that section, so, well, he's going to know. He goes on to say that there were simply no appeals to Parliament regarding Firepoint. This is a direct lie. So, well, that's pretty blunt, isn't it? Calling out Andrew Kramer as a liar there, and the New York Times are publishing it as well. This is a direct lie. The New York Times can refute if it shows a letter or post with our appeal to Parliament, and they won't because there isn't one, because it's a lie. The council has the Firepoint case as a priority, which he heads. We must either refute the public accusations or confirm them and forward the accumulated facts to the relevant authorities. We are working on this. So it's an ongoing investigation that his department is heading, and haven't finished it yet. But the New York Times information, which is obviously either to be used against the drone manufacturer or conversely to force us to come out with a premature communication without the facts gathered and play the other side. So he's basically saying you're working for the Russians here. It's a brilliant provocation. We need to do our jobs first, investigate any accusations, and if we find something dodgy, we'll hand it to the relevant authorities. And we're not going to be rushed on it. So wind your neck in, New York Times. Yeah, and then he goes on to say, I personally assert that the New York Times is lying and provoking. I also personally know Andrew Kramer is a person with whom I have communicated and who wrote a completely false and still unrefuted article about Yuri before the start of the enemy's full-scale aggression. If the New York Times still has any respect for the truth, it will refute the part of the article that concerns the GARMO, which I head. So there's obviously some personal beef going on there between this reporter, Andrew Kramer, and Yuri, who heads this GARMO. And yeah, I think they should Andrew Kramer should refute it if it's not accurate, because obviously accuracy in reporting, whilst becoming rarer these days, it has to be said, is important. Very important. We'd like to try and believe what we read in the newspapers. We'd like to try and think that the reporters and stuff like that have done some due diligence and are actually not spouting nonsense. We rely on politicians to spout nonsense, but reporters, we'd like them to report truth and dig into the truth and give us the truth. I know that these days that is probably a little bit of a naive notion, and basically, as individuals, have basically got to do our own research on the people who are supposed to be doing their own research, which basically makes us all reporters, really, I think. Might as well just cut out the middleman and just be reporters ourselves, which kind of what we do, isn't it, Laura? We kind of go through the news, see what's what, sift through the nonsense, the exaggeration, the dooming or the glooming or the hyperbolic wish casting, I think is a word nowadays. It's a new word for me, but I think it's called wish casting. All kind of over egging the pudding, as it were, and to find where the truth is, or what is most likely. I go on balance of probabilities. What is most likely to be where the truth is, and it'll be somewhere kind of in the middle, usually. Any thoughts on that New York Times little tiff with Yuri from Ukraine, Laura?
I hadn't known the depth of that sort of exchange too between those two. And I just to agree too with what you're saying, I feel like we just as citizens too can put more pressure on journalism to kind of just say we'd like, I mean, just really in the basic way, we'd like more accuracy. That I was just looking at something from foreign policy and thinking, and no offense to foreign policy, but that sounded like kind of more of an opinion than a fact. And that was a headline. I, yeah, I feel like we've kind of been let down in some regard by a number of outlets, particularly some that seem to take up Russian talking points, of course. But yeah, just the responsibility involved. I feel like that's just an overarching issue, just responsibility to others, responsible journalism. Yeah, and it isn't always easy, right? To look at the numbers or to look at the information and see what's true. I like your idea of looking at various sources, seeing how it cross-checks, but then maybe still having skepticism of if we're not getting it from the Ukrainians, is it really true?
Yeah, exactly. Does my head in. One of my pet niggles is people who parade their opinion as fact. It can be a little thing like somebody says it's blah blah blah, instead of saying I think it's blah blah blah. I mean, if you say it's blah blah blah, that's a statement. It is short for basically. So it's okay. That's a statement then, and a statement of fact. It is. Whereas I think it is not a statement of fact; it's someone's opinion, and I do it myself sometimes. It's very easy just to shorthand it and just say it's whatever. Well, what do you mean? I think it's. But when you're doing it when you're a reporter or when you're doing it when you're typing away and you've got a little bit of time and it's not just coming straight out your mouth into it into text, as it were. Then you can be a little bit more kind of nuanced whether you're stating an opinion or stating a fact. And it drives me. It's one of the things that drives me potty. It's like the improper use of an infinitive as well. People use never and always and can't and things like that. When actually, well, you could. Instead of can't, and the world mostly exists in the area of grey, different shade of grey rather than black and white. So yes, I kind of those two things kind of maybe I'm just pedantic. I suppose I am a little bit, but I like to kind of know where the truth is rather than just be fed a whole load of codswallop. So yes, there we go. Yeah. So on the codswallop thing, so there are talks at the moment. Let's go to oil. That because of Trump sanctions, that means India is not going to be buying any Russian oil ever again. Amen. And that's a load of bollocks. They still will buy oil. They came out today and said they're still going to buy oil. In fact, some oil traders from India basically said, well, yeah, we're not going to be buying oil that breaks the price cap. And we're not talking the EU, UK, and everyone else apart from the US price cap, which is now a dynamic price cap of $47.60 from memory. That was implemented in September the 3rd, fully implemented. There's a grace period, fully implemented by the 21st of January next year. The only G7 country that hasn't done it, so the G6 have, but G7, the only seventh one that hasn't, is the US, which is still on the old $60 price cap. So India basically turned around and said, shoved two fingers up at everyone else, apart from the US, who they worry about. And for good reason as well. Most of the world worries about the US. When the US puts sanctions on people, everyone else most of the world takes notice. And when the EU puts sanctions on people, the UK or anyone else, not so much. And that's why India's like, well, we're complying with international sanctions, meaning US sanctions, meaning we're going to continue, if we can, buy Russian oil if it's below $60. And at the moment, well, it is. It's about $54. And that's about $55. And that's without the discount. Without any discount. And they get about a $3 or $4 discount on that as well. So it's around about $50. So yeah, they can kind of, without breaking US sanctions, as long as they're not using a ship which the US has sanctioned, India don't give a crap about UK sanctions or EU sanctions. And this is why I've been banging on to my US friends to try and get Trump-a-lumper to sign up to the EU, the everyone else dynamic price cap of $47.60. Because that means that countries like India will think twice about, or their companies anyway, will think twice about buying oil above that. And at the moment, with the spot price of oil being as low as it is, they can actually say, well, we're doing it legally. We're not busting US sanctions. And they'd be right. Annoyingly, so they're still buying Russian oil. Even if they adhered to the price cap of 47.60, it'd still annoy us slightly, because the Russians are still making money on that oil, especially from oil fields where it costs them a few bucks, like $10 or whatever, to get it out of the ground and transport it along pipelines. And what was it? I think 40%, it was either 40 or 60. I'd have to look at my own post on this, of Russian, oil producing wells and stuff like that are cheap, and some of them are very expensive. Oh, Laura, I can see your hand. First hand of the day.
Thank you. No, and I come from, I think, a very naive stance in that, where it may be ideal of like, I want the price cap to be zero. And is that, though, what is in the current US sanction package, that there's the price cap for India is at 47 something? Do you know that? Or, and you could anything you'd like to respond to that too, where I feel like, we can make it, we can figure it out. Like we can't sponsor this ever, but are there beliefs of like, well, no, that's just not possible. But to me, we're in this absurd period. Like, why do we have to give them anything? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And this is an area of interest of mine as well. So if it costs Russia, from, say half of its oil, just over half of its oil fields, it costs it around about average of $45, to get it out the ground. These are all brownfield, sites and wherever, where there's not much oil left in there. Therefore, it takes them a lot of effort, to kind of get the last bit of oil from those oil wells and stuff like that. And on average, it costs about $45. So if they're getting it out of the ground and selling it for less than $45, that particular oil for less than $45, they're losing money, which is rubbish for them. But there's other oil fields in Russia which are kind of just it's just spouting it. It's just pouring out of the ground, and it only costs them about $10 to get it out of the ground there. Some are as low as $5. So the average there is about $10-15. That obviously, if they can sell it for, say the oil price is $55 at the moment. So they're making $10. I'd say around about, this is all kind of roughly figures, about $10 on the expensive oil they're going to get out, but they're making hand over fist. They're making about $40 on the cheap stuff. So the whole idea with EU sanctions and UK sanctions is not to cut Russian oil from the market completely, because that would cause a bit of a supply and demand problem, and in the oil markets, and oil prices would spike and all that kind of stuff. So from my point of view, it's not that it's Russian oil that's the problem. It's the profits and the revenue and the profits that Russia makes from selling its oil. Yeah, now if Russia sold its oil, for instance, at what it cost them to get out of the ground, and for what it cost them to transport it to whatever terminal they're going to use, that would kind of be okay because they're not making any profits, which they can't then pump into their war machine. All that would do is, just pay their costs, and therefore they'd be able to keep their refineries and stuff like that ticking over. Well, what? Not the refinery. Sorry, keep the oil wells and stuff ticking over and stuff like that, and be able to supply the world market with oil, so that wouldn't cause a supply and demand issue, because they're still supplying. And two, it would mean that there would be no profits for the Russian war machine. So that's kind of the ideal minimum. Yeah, obviously, if the price cap was lower than his production costs, well, actually, even better, because then it's costing them money to get it out of the ground, which means they've got to find that money from somewhere else. So that would be the best thing. But the baseline for me is to actually make it get to their production costs. If that makes sense. And I can see Mark's got his hand up, and he's going to have something to say on this. I'm going to get to Mark. Mark.
Hey, Sir Shaggy, Laura, thank you for hosting the space. It's really good. It doesn't seem like there's that many Ukraine spaces anymore, and especially quality ones like with you and Laura hosting and co-hosting. So I thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you going over the oil revenue and what's going on with the sanctions. I've kind of long maintained or believed that the war isn't going to be won or lost on the land or on the battlefield. It's going to be an economic war. That war-making capability of Russia, and it seems like the screws are being tightened, especially in regards to Russia's really number one big money maker, oil. And if it can't get revenue from oil to fund its war machine, I mean, they just can't survive. I go up and down, depressed and encouraged on everything going on in Ukraine. And first off, heartfelt thank you to the brave Ukrainian soldiers and the men and women fighting Russia there. It's their blood that is really paying for this war. It's just absolutely incredible that they have been able for 3.5 years now, been able to hold off this far superior military with their own blood and courage and steadfastness. So yeah, really good there. And so the thought occurred to me, if Russia hasn't had its way in Ukraine for 3.5 years, they never will. They never ever will. I mean, if they couldn't win their 3-day special military operation in 3 days, and it's 3.5 years later, and they're still trying to do it, they're not going to get there. But anyway, I did have a question for you. And this may throw off the topic conversation. If you want to defray this maybe to a little future time, it's something that I found very encouraging news recently, and this has to do with that a Swedish warfighter, the plane, the Griffin. I've seen some reports on that, a bit contradictory. If you knew information about the Griffin's specifics, that would be welcome. But again, I know you're talking about oil, and if you want to hold off on it, I respect that. So anyway, thank you again for hosting, you guys.
No worries, no worries. I'll tell you what, I'll do Griffin right after I've finished oil, because Griffin's one of my Griffin's one of my favorite subjects. It is. So I'm going to do it after I finish about oil. So Laura, did that make sense? The oil, how much like production costs of oil at the ground. So if the Russians are not going to give it away for free, which they're just going to say no, yeah, because one, they're not a charity. So we've got to try and get the oil price down to such a level which they still think it's worth supplying the global markets with, and they supply about 5% of the global markets, which doesn't sound like an awful lot, but it would produce a bit of a spike and all that kind of stuff in the oil prices, which would then cost us all refined stuff would go up in price, your petrol would go up in price, and basically it would cause inflation if the oil price spiked like it did in early 2022, when everyone was panicking. But recently, oil prices have steadily gone lower. Gas prices have steadily gone lower as well from those mega price hikes in Europe and whatever in 2022. It's all kind of stabilized a little bit. So the EU and basically the rest of the world who supports Ukraine doesn't really and has an eye and a critical thinking eye on economics, doesn't want price hikes, because if price hikes in the rest of our economies because of higher oil prices, then we're all going to have less money in our pockets to be able to give to Ukraine. So it's kind of a catch-22. We want low oil prices so that we can have more money in our pockets to be able to give to Ukraine and make stuff and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense, Laura?
It does. Mark, thank you so much for those kind comments. It was so kind. I think in my head, I do wonder, say if we had just taken the severe approach, cut them off completely, destroyed, no contact, don't give us any oil or gas. We don't want any of that. Where would that have created a ripple effect in the world? Like what you say, the subsequent price increases of oil, would that have created more of a demand from citizens? Like, you have to stop this right now to get things stable. Because that's where I wonder, we're all just kind of going along with it, right? Of oil's good. Where if we had, stopped funding genocide, would that have created a ripple effect in the world, that it would have created a demand from citizens around the world because of oil prices, unfortunately, right? If that's what it takes to stop Russia immediately and stop this madness. That's I think where I keep coming back to.
Not really. I think the rest of the world, and a lot of the world is just ambivalent to it. All they care about is how much money they've got in their pockets and how they can feed their families and stuff like that. So let me just post something into the Purple Pill, actually. When I find the right thing, where am I? There I am. So let me post a graph into the Purple Pill, which is going to show the price of oil over the last 5 years. And as you can see from that, is it in the Purple Pill? Yes. Reply. There we go. That should be in the Purple Pill now. So if you have a look at that, Laura, and everyone else, you'll see that in 2022, there was a massive spike in the price of oil. And that was when the world and world markets thought that, shit, there's going to be no more Russian oil. Yeah. We're fucked. Yeah. We haven't got the supply that we need. We're going to be beating each other up trying to get oil. And the oil price went from, it was recovering after COVID and whatever, but it went from around about $60, $70, all the way up to over $110. That caused massive problems, massive price hikes everywhere. I can also find the gas one as well, which is actually even worse, than that one. It caused massive price hikes for people's electricity bills, for industries, bills and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, God, look at the gas ones. Even worse. I'm going to put the gas one there now. It caused massive dislocations in the markets. And Europe and everyone else learnt from that and just went, fuck, we don't want to do that again. Because that basically meant, the companies and individuals, as I said, just didn't have as much money anymore, to give to Ukraine, or had to go into debt to be able to give to Ukraine. Because, we haven't got, infinite deep pockets and stuff like that. The money's got to come from somewhere. And if you look at that, gas one as well, I haven't pressed reply. I'm just looking at it by myself. So there we go. I'll just, that should be there now. So if you look at the gas one, that was even worse. Gas prices went from, under about 100 up to about, even touched 350, euros per megawatt hour. Now the gas price, because it's all been managed by the EU, because there hasn't been this, big kind of, big stick approach and just trying to embargo basically Russian oil products and stuff like that. The markets have calmed down a lot. So if you look at those two graphs, you can see that since around about the end of, the end of 2024, 2022, the start of 2023, things have calmed down a lot. In fact, prices have kind of come down a lot. Prices in gas, for instance, in Europe, were at 31, euros per megawatt hour. And that's the same price as things were coming out of COVID back in 2021, the middle of 2021. So that means things are a lot calmer. Russian energy products are still hitting the market, but that there are caps on the prices. And if everybody did adhere to the caps, which they don't, and not all countries ever will, especially China and other countries as well, well, mainly China actually, then yeah, it's all about keeping the markets not panicking, not panicking with price panics like we saw in 2022, keeping the supply there, but at the same time, not allowing Russia to make, much, if any, money from selling those products. So basically, if it costs them $30, President Zelensky wants $30 as the price cap. I actually want $30 as a price cap because I think that's kind of the middle ground. Russia would make a little bit of money from it, but only kind of enough to really kind of keep its oil industry maintained, as it were, rather than having billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of profits going into making weapons and stuff like that to attack Ukraine with. So it's a balancing act between the rest of the world, keeping the rest of the world on board, or at least not fully against. And you would just get unrest in the streets if prices had remained at near their highs in 2022, like 300 euros per megawatt hour. Which is 10 times more than it is now. So imagine if your energy bill was 10 times higher than it is now, Laura. Or your petrol price, your gas at the petrol station was twice as much as it is now. Would you be happy? Would you be happy? Would you have as much money, to give to Ukraine compared to what you have now? And then expand this to governments as well. Would industry, would governments be able to afford to send stuff to Ukraine, if they haven't got the money to build stuff because they're paying massive, energy costs, not to Russia, but to every other country apart from Russia. They're going to be making hand over fist. It's okay if you're a gas producer or an oil producer, but if you're going to be the one making loads of money. So like Australia and Norway and America and whatever, the people that own those oil wells and gas things there are going to be rubbing their hands in glee because they're going to be making loads of money. But the rest of us who are trying to support Ukraine would be a bit stuffed. So it's trying to keep oil prices and energy prices down, low enough, the one it benefits us, consumers, so we don't get pissed off, and then we don't start having to go at our governments and the people who aren't Ukrainiacs, don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to, saying, oh, just abandon Ukraine, let Russia win because energy prices will go back to normal, which will probably be the case. If Ukraine lost and Russia won, energy prices probably will go back to where they were and everybody would be happy apart from obviously the Ukrainians and us who support Ukraine. So we don't want that. So we've got to think of what the average, asshole in the street who doesn't give a shit thinks as well, because at the moment they're sat on the fence or with their heads in the sand, and I don't particularly want them to be marching down the roads telling us to pull out of helping Ukraine. So we've got to kind of manage that a little bit. Does that kind of make sense a little bit, Laura?
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I think it's very interesting, like from my view, to consider like, well, maybe it would have been the opposite. If it would have turned people against Ukraine, yeah, definitely, it's a more nuanced approach, I think, than I thought about, and particularly why it shouldn't be
Yes.
head of the Department of Treasury or something.
Yeah. It's easy to go for the big stick and just start whooping it about a little bit, but you're going to have collateral damage, and you're going to think, okay, what kind of collateral damage, is wielding a big stick, a blunderbuss approach going to cause? And when you think about it and step back a little bit and turn the emotion chip off, then you realize actually that's going to cause more harm than good. And that's what the European, having looked at the energy spikes and the price spikes in energy in 2022, into the middle to the Q3 of 2022, they went, oh dear, this is not good. We're going to have to try and do this another way. And that's why they came out with price caps and this kind of stuff. And that's why, and trying to, I mean, a lot of people say sanctions don't work and EU sanctions don't work, and there's been 19 packages now and Russia's still making money and all this kind of stuff. And it's true. it's true they haven't completely stopped by a long way Russian trade, but that's partly by design. To completely stop the trade would cause supply issues in the rest of the market, which would then spike prices, which would then cause even bigger problems than Russia causes already. So they've had this slowly approach, boiling the frog in effect, but boiling the Russian energy frog in effect, just lowering the price cap, getting more sanctions on there slowly, without triggering any market turmoil and things like that. Just trying to up it, turn the temperature up slowly, until it gets to a point where Russians are just going to go, fuck, well, bollocks, our economy's screwed. And it's taken too long. Yeah, I agree. But it is what it is. We are where we are. Some things I think could have been a bit better. The price cap, for instance, should have been a dynamic one from the start rather than a fixed one, because as soon as oil prices dipped below $60 a barrel, that meant that everybody could legally import Russian oil because, well, the spot price of Russian oil was below the price cap, and it was below the price cap this year for quite a long time. So that's why you saw people, the oil traders, just buying Russian oil and sticking it on a non-sanctioned tanker because it was all legal. Yeah, even though it was Russian oil. But because it was below the price cap, it was all fine. But now the price cap from the EU is $47 and the spot price is $54. Then, well, you can't buy spot oil and then bring it to Europe. You could if it went below $47.60. You could bring it to Europe, but not because it's above it. However, the US still has $60. So India and countries like that are just like, well, we're looking at the figure that we like, yeah, and they like the $60 figure rather than the $47.60 figure, obviously, because they can just point to it and say, well, we're applying US sanctions. The US says $60. We're buying it at spot price 55 now. We're complying, and they're right, unfortunately, which is annoying for the rest of us in Europe who want it at 47 or lower. Actually, if oil prices, that oil price cap as well gets looked at every 6 months. So if the average over the past, I think it's 120, or the previous 120 days from a certain date after the end of that 6 months, so that's going to be January. If the price has moved, the average price has moved more than 5% from the current price cap, then it gets adjusted up or down. So if the price has been higher, more than 5% higher on average over that 120-day period, or the previous 120-day period, then it'll go up. It'll be like $50 or something like that, the price cap. But if it's been lower, which is what I'm hoping for, and looking at the forecast, it might be lower. If it is lower than that on average, then the price cap will be lowered. And I'm kind of hoping that the price cap, at the next review, is going to be lowered to something like 42. It may just go down a little bit the first one, but 6 months after that, it should go down to around about 42, which is below what some commentators say is the average overall price of Russia producing oil. Some people, I think it was Trent Polenko, said the average across all Russian oil fields is $45. Another oily guy said it was $55 actually, which my idea was, from what I understood, was it was $15. And both me and Trent were partially right and partially wrong. I think it was 60% of Russian oil fields produce oil at an average of $45, and 40% of Russian oil fields produce cheap stuff at an average of $15. So we were both right with our numbers, 45 and 15, but it was just talking about different types of oil fields that the Russians have. So $30, which President Zelensky wants, and I kind of want as well, if it was a fixed one, then $30 I would like. Yes, the Russians will be able to sell some oil at profit from those cheap oil fields, but the oil from the Arctic and stuff like that, which costs 45, will be costing them money. So yeah, it's a little bit. There's a lot of swings and roundabouts in this oil game, or in this energy game. Gas is included, Laura, and it gets a little bit complicated, and that's why, especially in the middle of this year, people were screaming about India breaking the sanctions. and other countries breaking the sanctions. And actually, at that time, when the spot oil price was below the price cap, they actually weren't breaking the oil price cap because oil was below the price cap, which is why the dynamic price cap is a bloody good idea. But it's only once every 6 months it gets reviewed. I'd like it weekly or daily. I'd like it, but weekly would do, or at least monthly would do. Anything that kind of makes it move around a little bit, because that means there would always be a price cap, or nearly always be a price cap, and even if unless it was like a sudden dip down by more than 15%, because the price cap is set at 15% of the 15%. So you work out the average cost of a barrel of oil over the previous 120 days prior to the review, and then it's 15% below that number. So hope that makes sense. I yacked a bit there, Laura.
Oh, and your point too, that there is a grace period also until November 21st. Is that your understanding? So when people see, look, those are tankers, our impression is that they're outside of they're inside the grace period, excuse me.
Yeah, so so President Trump's specific tariffs on Lukoil and whatever, and the other one, was it Gazprom? Might be Gazprom, can't remember. So that one, yeah, basically he said that from the day he made the announcement, I think it was the 22nd of October, he said it came into effect immediately, so nobody could get new contracts or things couldn't do new stuff, couldn't buy oil. Have new contracts going. But basically, if you'd already done your contracts, made your deal and stuff like that, or if it was on a boat, on a tanker on the way, you got a month to get that oil from where it is offloaded into your refinery or whatever. So you got a month before they kind of come into effect. You got to get your affairs in order. So, for instance, companies, for instance, Lukoil, I think it is in Bulgaria and the Netherlands and the US as well. Countries or those companies have got to divest themselves from any Lukoil fingers on those companies. They've got a month to do it. The Lukoil's got to be out, otherwise those companies and possibly those countries as well will face secondary sanctions by Trump-a-Lumpa and his big stick. So what I've been looking out for is the old exceptions file, because there's always exceptions. There's a rule, and it's like learning French. This is the rule for the verb, but then here are the exceptions. It's annoying. I found that really annoying when I was trying to learn French. There's more exceptions than there are rules. But anyway, so so at the moment there's a bit of news out today. So Germany was like a little bit kind of panicking slightly because it's got 3 oil refineries which are which have Lukoil as a shareholder. One of them, I think, the 55%. Another one, Lukoil owns 34%, and another one, this is from memory, I think they own about 13-14% of. But they don't have any kind of direct control of it. They own that amount of the refinery, but they don't make any money from it because any monies or dividends which would be passed to them don't get passed to them, and they're not on the board and all this kind of stuff. And basically the German government run their share of those companies, so they don't actually have any control. It's just the kind of their names still on the documents, some of the documents, but they don't actually have any working control over those. So the Germans pointed this out to the Americans, basically said there's no way we're going to be able to get Lukoil to sell its portion, its shares in those companies in a month's time, and also the way it is set up at the moment, the Lukoil don't make any money from those refineries. There's no profits or even revenue that goes to Lukoil themselves. Yeah, they're completely kind of out of the loop. They're just kind of like a silent partner, as it were, in ownership of it. And if the German government were to, under German law and international law, they'd have to, if they wanted to snaffle that shareholding from Lukoil, they'd have to pay them for it, and they'd have to pay them at market rates as well. They can't just say, "Here you go, for 55% of that refinery, here's €1." It doesn't work like that, because it'd be taken to court and the courts would side with Lukoil, and you don't want that happening. So it'd have to be at market rates and stuff like that. And the last thing the Germans want to do is have to fork out billions and billions of dollars, to buy Lukoil's share of these 3 refineries out. Not that the money would go to Lukoil. The money would go into a trustee account or some frozen account, for after the war, and then maybe Lukoil gets it then, maybe Lukoil doesn't. But the Germans would have to find billions and billions of dollars to be stuck away in a piggy bank somewhere, and nobody would be able to have access to it whilst the war was going. So the Germans managed to convince the US that, listen, Lukoil's not making any money from this. It's all just kind of on paper ownership, but they haven't got any control. They're not making any money of it. Can we have an exception, please? And today, or was it today or yesterday? Anyway, I think it was today. The US turned around and said, "Okay, you can have an exception. It's okay." And they gave them some kind of letter, which basically said, "Yeah, you're not going to get sanctioned, Germany, or those refineries, even though you are kind of owned in part by this company Lukoil, which we don't like anymore." So that's kind of what's happened in Germany. Now you've got other countries who are also going to be asking for exemptions as well, like Hungary, like Slovakia, and then you got some other countries which are like, you know what? We're like Romania and Bulgaria, I think it is, who are going down the hard case route, who are basically saying to Lukoil, you got a month to sell your shareholdings or your refineries or your oil infrastructure in our countries, or we're just going to nick it. Yeah. So what do you want to do? And Lukoil's like, oh shit. And they've been basically saying, yeah, okay, we're going to sell our businesses in these countries. Who wants it? And stuff like that. So that's what's going on in some countries, but not Germany. Germany got a waiver. Other countries are a little bit more hardboiled with it. You got Serbia, which has a refinery, which is mostly oil. I think it's majority owned by a Russian company. It's off the top of my head, I can't remember which one it is. They're a bit stuffed at the moment because they can't get any new oil in there because the various sanctions and stuff like that. And this one oil refinery that Serbia's got produces like 80%. Oh, hang on a second. That's pretty cool. Yeah, 80% of Serbia's petrol and diesel and stuff like that. So a little bit screwed at the moment. Kind of serves them right because, well, not the whole, obviously, Serbian population, but Serbia, just like Hungary and just like Slovakia, has had years, 3 years, to divest itself and find other sources of oil and gas. They haven't, because they're cozying up to Russia. And now they're in the find out phase because finally Trump's America has turned around and kind of, with that Serbian refinery, for instance, it had multiple waivers through the Biden administration and then the Trump administration. It had various waivers, various exemptions, so they were allowed to continue to buy Russian oil and refine it in their refinery, and then flog it to their populace, supply their populace and whatever. But about, what was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? I think it was the start of October, actually. So about 3 weeks ago, they asked for another waiver, and Trump Olympus regime said,
Oh, good. I was just checking. Thank you. Good job. I was just checking to see if I'd lost sound. Thank you.
no, my app crashed. And good job I've got my laptop going because I didn't crash, but my phone app crashed. So that's good. That's why I have 2 things here, because otherwise that would be a disaster. The whole space would have crashed. That's why we have multiple host devices, should we say. Although if my internet connection did go down, I'd be a bit stuffed, because I'm Shaggy one bars on the mobile network. So anyways, it happens occasionally, Laura. So I don't know where I got up to then before my app crashed. Serbia. Yeah. So it's a bit screwed at the moment. It can't bring oil in. for its refinery, because its refinery is, under sanction now, and nobody wants to bring oil. Well, the Russians obviously would love to deliver oil there, but they're not allowed. And nobody else wants to deliver oil there because, well, the refinery is under sanction, so they're not going to do that either. So Serbia's like a little bit kind of, oh shit, what we're going to do now? Well, it serves them right, in my view. Oh, Brad's coming up. Excellent. Brad. So yeah, sorry I can't speak to you on the phone, Brad, because I was on my space. So that's why I couldn't answer your call. Are you there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm here. How you guys doing?
I'm good. I had to decline your call then, because I'm yakking away here.
Oh, it's no problem, sir. I'm just here. I was dealing with some other issues, working with some stuff here, but yeah, it's good to be here tonight.
All right, cool. Yeah, I was just whizzing past my timeline, and I spotted your lunch that you had today, wherever you were. That looked quite nice. Looks salady. Might want to get some stew inside you next time. So we're on talking oil at the moment. Yeah. So basically, these sanctions from the US are good because it's the US doing them. But they're not going to be a magic bullet and suddenly stop all Russian oil trade. I did put a post out earlier on, pointing out that this is two companies. Yes, they do currently, have about 70% of the market of exporting crude from Russia to the rest of the world. So that's a big chunk actually. But, the Russians and sanctions circumvention, I think there's going to be other companies, Russian companies, which aren't under sanction, which are suddenly going to find themselves getting into the selling oil trade. Yeah. And they'll be able to do that legally, because they're not under sanction. And therefore, you'll see Russian oil still finding its way onto markets. Some Russian oil that would normally have come from, Lukoil and, whatever, Rosneft, I think it is the second one. They won't be able to do it. But other companies will step in and do it. So it's a game of whack-a-mole, basically, Laura. It's one of those things. This is the things with sanctions, and this is the things when you haven't got the whole world on board with sanctions. You're going to have countries and individuals and companies and stuff like that who are always going to try and find ways of circumventing the sanctions. And there's generally ways of circumventing the sanctions, whether that be legally by just having a company do it that's not sanctioned, or illegally, i.e. with ship-to-ship transfers in fog banks, out of sight of people watching and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, there's lots of ways to circumvent sanctions. So it is just basically a game of whack-a-mole, and it takes a lot longer to implement the sanctions, to come up with the sanctions, to find the loopholes, and to get agreement, especially in the EU when you've got 27 people in a bloody committee all have to agree, and you've got a couple of those, at least, Hungary and Slovakia, and maybe even Czechia now as well. The governments there kind of, vetoing and all this kind of stuff. Annoying. But it is what it is. It's real politic kind of gets in the way of wish casting, as I now call it. The word I started using. A lot of people wish cast on what they'd like to happen. It's like, well, yeah, I'd like that to happen as well. I'd also like to be a billionaire. Yeah, and I'd like to live forever, or at least as long as I want. But that's not going to happen. So where am I? Right, I got dodgy hips. I haven't got a lot of money in the bank, and I need to try and help Ukraine with what I've got and what tools I've got. So, no point sitting there. It's nice sitting there dreaming occasionally, but you gotta be practical rather than idealistic. And there's a lot of idealism that I read in posts. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, didn't. Here we are. What can we do? So yes, I'm glad that the EU, did come around to the dynamic price cap idea. I'm not going to say it was my idea. Obviously, I'm not going to say it was my idea and they listened to Shaggy. But it was one of my ideas that I wanted. And when it came out, I was happy. I was a happy camper. Same with, actually, Mark, I'm going to get off oil now. I'm going to get onto Grippins. Because I just remembered your question from before. So when was it? 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I think it was May 2023. When the Gripen was first mentioned, or at least when I first came across the Gripen being first mentioned, I was like, Gripen? No, I never heard of it. I've never heard of it. So I did a little bit looking at it and did a bit more looking at it, and my eyes were getting big and I started getting a drool dribbling down my chin. I was like, this is awesome, this plane. I loved it. And I basically fell in love with the Gripen now. I think it's the best. I think yeah, I wish it was British, because I'd love it even more then. But it's my favorite of all the planes out there, even the F-35 and all that kind of stuff. I love it, for the exact reasons the Swedes love it. Because it is made to beat the Russians, from not perfect airfields and all this kind of stuff. It's made to be it's like a guerrilla fighter. I call it a guerrilla fighter. It's small, yes, it's only got one engine, but it's mainly a defensive fighter rather than going on long missions deep into the heart of Russia, doing bombing runs and stuff like that. No, it's not for that. It's to protect your airspace, or to protect, or to go and attack things which are kind of near the border, within a couple of 100 or 200 kilometers of your border, just to keep the bloody Vatniks away, keep the orcs away, type of thing. So it's ideal for that kind of thing. It's got a pretty good range. It's only got one engine. So obviously if the engine kind of, goes out, something happens to it, then you're a bit screwed. But it's made, in my view, and some pilots said this as well, it's not meant for deep strikes going 1,000 or 500 kilometers into enemy territory. So if your engine does go a little bit wrong and you got to bail, then you're probably going to be bailing out over your own territory, which is fine. Yeah, it's better than bailing. Well, it's fine compared to bailing out in the middle of Russia somewhere. So yeah. It can be maintained very cheaply. It's about half the cost of the maintenance cost. Flight out, like cost per flight, or something like that, is about half what the F-16 is, and similar for for its peers, basically. So it's cheaper to run, it's cheaper to buy, it's quicker to maintain, it's cheaper to maintain, and it's quicker to maintain. Apparently, you can. I've read some reports that they're saying that with 6 technicians, well, actually, one very decent technician, and 5 people who go around running around and carrying stuff, it can be turned around from landing, to taking off again. It can be rearmed and refueled in 20 minutes. Well, now, on the ground, and this is a post I made yesterday, pilots like that. Because, I mean, if you're on the ground and you're a pilot, you're like a duck out of water. And you don't like it, it's not very comfortable. Because, well, missiles can come in, and these days drones can come in and screw you on the ground. Pilots love being in the air, and I get that because I used to be a pilot, when I was younger. And the freedom of being in the air, yes, compared to being a duck out of water on the ground. It's not very good. So it's a wonderful little plane. Plus it's quite small as well, but it's only got one engine. It's quite small when you see it next to like a MiG or something like that. It looks kind of tiny actually, which is great from a radar cross-section point of view, because obviously there's going to be less of it to see. So yes, it's not stealth. It's not a stealth fighter, but it's kind of stealthier than a bigger plane, of the same materials, because, well, there's less of it for the radar to see. So I like it, and especially the newer models of it, the different versions of it. I think they're up to an E and an F version now. And I think there's C and D, and I think the D is the trainer version, and the F is the trainer version, so like a 2-seat version. Somebody from the air wing can come up and correct me on that one. And then you've got so it carries, and the new version can carry like these missiles, these Meteor missiles, which can go like 200 kilometers, over the horizon. You don't even have to see your target, with visually, line of sight and stuff like that. Your radar can track it. So that means that means if they do get them, which will be a while, don't get your hopes up. I'll come to this a little bit. When they do get them, then basically Ukraine could be flying, inside their own territory, and projecting air power out 200 kilometers into Auckland, because these missiles, can reach that far. So the Russians would have to behave. So that's going to really help. Now the thing I kind of wanted when I'm dribbling again, but the thing I kind of wanted when I realized, this was the perfect plane, for Ukraine, because it can take off from short runways. it's not like a vertical takeoff and landing plane. It's because it's a smaller plane and stuff like that. It just needs a shorter runway. In fact, it doesn't even need a runway. It just needs a flat bit of something, tarmac, so it can take off roads. It's been designed to take off from Swedish roads in the middle of nowhere, to be maintained in the middle of nowhere on a flat bit Swedish road. I think it's 800 meters long is all the runway has to be, rather than like a lot longer for an F-16 runway or an F-35 runway or any other fighter runway. It's shorter than that. It doesn't have to be, I mean, obviously you don't want rocks and stuff on your runway or on your road when you're taking off, but its air intakes are not like the F-16s, which is underneath the plane, basically scooping up anything that's on the ground. Or a lot of stuff that's on the ground. It's on the sides of the aeroplane, so it's less prone to scooping up or sucking in debris from the runway and stuff like that. So I think it's great. So I kind of had this fantasy of this would be one. It's a wonderful little aircraft that's very, very capable, cheap, and perfect for Ukraine. Two, because Saab is having not problems making them, but they just haven't got the production capacity to make them. In fact, they kind of licensed sticking it all together and stuff like that, and making a few components to Brazil. Brazil ordered some, and Brazil decided to build a factory so they could stick them together like an IKEA set, and make a few components. So back in 2023, I thought, well, Ukraine could do that easily. So if Ukraine decides it wants the Gripen, and it basically it was dribbling as well, just like I was thinking, wow, factory in Ukraine. Now obviously building a factory in Ukraine right now, to make Gripens, kind of asking for trouble, because obviously there's a bit of a war on, and it'd get bombed probably, which wouldn't be very good. So there is talk, and this came out a couple of weeks ago, not a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago. This is why I was excited the other day. The FT broke the story that, the Saab has agreed, to build a factory in Ukraine, or in principle to build a factory in Ukraine, to build Gripens. And obviously President Zelensky a few days before that was in Sweden, and they announced that there was a letter of understanding or something between Saab, the Swedish government, and Ukraine, for Ukraine to purchase between 100 and 150 Gripens. Not immediately, because, well, one Saab has got to build around about 90 in its back order book before it, well, that's what its order book is. It can only produce about 20 to 30 a year at the moment. So that's 3 years away. Actually, it's got a 3-year order book at the moment. So that's why I'm thinking that Ukraine basically said, well, build a factory after the war, after we've won the war. You Saab, help us build a factory in Ukraine to make these Ukrainian Gripens, basically. And Saab was like, great idea. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I'm dribbling. I am excited about this because my dream came true, basically. One of my long-term dreams came true. There looks like there will be a Gripen factory, building Gripens, Ukrainian Gripens, in Ukraine at some point, after the war. And I hope it starts immediately after the war. And obviously I hope the war finishes very, very soon. Now the icing on the cake on this, or, well, the elephant in the room in a bad way, is one of the major problem with the Gripen at the moment is it has a US engine in it made by General Electric. So therefore, the US, whether under Biden or under Trump, has got this veto fucking restriction thing, if you pardon my French. ITAR it's called. So they got, because it contains something which is American, the Americans can stick the fingers in and say, no, you can't transfer that technology, or you can't sell the Gripen, to a country that we don't like. And this happened actually last month. Colombia, and Saab, came to a deal to buy some Gripens, and I can't remember the number, and the US basically said, no, you're not going to be selling to Colombia because we don't like Colombia. Therefore, because the Gripen has a US engine in it, then we can say no. And obviously Saab could sell to obviously Colombia, but then they wouldn't get any more engines for the Gripen, so they're a bit screwed on that one. However, there is an alternative. There is an engine, out there called, I think it's called the EJ-230. It comes from the Eurofighter, the Typhoon. It's around about the same size as the General Electric engine, not exactly and stuff like that, but that could be used, especially the slightly souped up version that is proposed to be is being looked at by Saab and people to be able to maybe use that engine instead of the current US engine. And because that engine is a European engine, it doesn't come with US restrictions on it. And that's what I hope for in the future. I hope that within the next couple of years, Ukrainian engineers and Saab engineers, Swedish engineers will get together, we'll figure out this new European engine, shove it in a Gripen, and then and it's slightly more power and 15% less thirsty actually than the General Electric engine, and we'll come up with a Ukrainian Gripen that's ITAR free, that hasn't got any restrictions on it whatsoever, that's made in Ukraine. That's my kind of blue sky dream, which is now coming to me, as it were, with this announcement of 100 to 150 Gripens order from Ukraine to Sweden, plus the factory announcement in the future. Well, the factory announcement's happened, but the possibility of a factory in Ukraine, and plus this kind of behind the scenes. It isn't really talked about. There was an article in April which talked about this engine, but it hasn't really been talked about much, and I like that. Because it's definitely not on the table. It's definitely not off the table. I think it's under the table, being worked on as we speak. But obviously, don't say too much about it because you don't want to get Trump to get wind of it and start getting all pissed off and sticking his fingers in where he shouldn't. So I'm hoping I'm hoping Saab definitely are working on a European engine Gripen. I hope that's going to come out soon, and I hope that when Ukraine do buy their load of Gripens and start making them in Ukraine, it does come with an engine that hasn't got any restrictions on it. So no US parts, please. No Swiss parts, please. No parts from any country that is likely or has shown that it sticks its micromanaging fingers in somebody else's business, because it is nobody else's business. When you're fighting an existential war, you got to use all the tools at your disposal rather than having some third party micromanaging your war for you. That's done my head in no end, this war, should we say. That kind of stuff is just ridiculous. Oh, anyway, I get myself worked up, Laura. You better say something.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brad, for joining us too. It's so good to see you. I know when we talked about the timeline, I saw some exchanges between Shaggy, you and David D about the timeline, but maybe it's kind of, and not to necessarily keep it from the United States, but just to keep it more under wraps, that are we not quite sure about when we're talking about? Like, I think some of us were discouraged by the 10 to 15 year timeline. But do we think it may actually be much more earlier than that if we want to wade into that?
So, from what I understand is the brand new ones, because just Saab's got an order book, it's got to supply some to quite a few actually to the Swedish military themselves, and some others they've got to fulfill as well. So they've got an order book of maybe 80 to 90 Gripens, and they only make about 30 a year, so that's 3 years anyway, even at full capacity. So unless those orders got bumped, and Ukraine put an order in and they were built straight away, and that's possible, I suppose, but I think it's virtually just above non-zero, because obviously the Swedes are going to be looking after the Swedes first. And I think they're going to produce about 60 or 70 just for the Swedish military. So it'll still be a couple of years out. Plus, to actually make them in Ukraine, you don't really, I mean, you can build artillery factories and stuff like that, but you don't want to be building a massive big plane factory anywhere in Ukraine while there's a full-scale war going on. That's just not, it's asking for trouble. It's going to be targeted, and unless you turn some like James Bond and you built it underground in a salt mine, like it's just not going to happen. So building the factory is only going to start, in my view, thinking about it logically, kind of when Ukraine wins the war. and there's no chance of it being bombed, basically. Plus, the development for this engine is going to take a little while as well, so that would slot in quite nicely as well. Plus, there's got to be financing for this as well. These planes aren't being given by Sweden or by Saab, so the financing has got to be there as well. So there's going to be some kind of reparations package from Russia, and all this needs to be sorted out before this order becomes kind of real. So it's kind of it's a letter of intent, I think they called it. So it's a hope, basically, that Ukraine have to put in an order for 100 to 150 in the future. They decided that strategically, when they kicked the Russians out and whatever, they do need an air force. The current planes that they've got are Soviet. Mostly Soviet planes. Yes, they've got a few F-16s, but mostly Soviet planes, and they're basically running out. Well, they basically run out of airtime. They're just running on fumes of airtime at the moment. But they want to obviously transition to a Western Air Force, and therefore they're looking at different types of fighters and stuff like that. And the three main ones from reports that they've decided they're going to go for, out of all the fighters, they're going to go with the F-16 from the States because, well, there's loads of them, loads of spare parts and all this kind of stuff. Plus, they're flying them already. Although the F-16 is an older plane, but they haven't got the money to buy F-35s. Basically Ukraine. So it's just too expensive for them. F-16s are good, but not perfect, but they got a lot going for them. And the Mirage, or they even talk of the French Mirage, the French Rafale. So the Ukrainians have got some Mirage 2000s at the moment. The new version of that is called the Rafale, and there were some whispers today and yesterday about, them maybe getting some of them from France at the moment, with Macron talking about that maybe a little bit, but that's all a bit kind of rumor mill at the moment. The French obviously will probably like some orders from the Ukrainians, especially obviously selling them. So at the moment it seems to be that the companies are like trying to get some planes given to Ukraine so they can test them out, some freebies as it were, and then once they've tested them out, then the actual money orders will come in for after the war, for when Ukraine needs an air force. And Ukraine apparently is talking about having an air force of about 250 planes. From what I read today, they want about 250 fighters, and of those, about 100 to 150 they want as Gripens, and the rest split between the F-16 and the Rafale, the French one as well. The French plane. So yeah, that's kind of what the talk is. It is a bit blue sky because it's for some years down the line. And then when you heard 10 to 15 years, Laura, it's because it's going to take a while to build 100 to 150 planes. It just takes a long time. Even with Saab at the moment only making 30 a year, you can see that's 5 years. Even if it's just 5 years worth of production for Saab at the moment, even if they started today, the last plane wouldn't be delivered until 5 years time. So yeah, that's what this 10 to 15 years thing is, and plus it's a lot of money as well. Trying to buy a whole air force and create a whole air force, it's a shitload of money, and where's that money going to come from? My hope is it comes from Russian reparations in the future. Laura?
And that, do you have thoughts about why? I think a lot of us have the reference, at least from history and World War II, when there was such a push to get more ammunition, get more munitions, planes, everything, tanks built. What's stopping them from hiring more people? Or I know those are more technical questions, but I think some of us are so puzzled by that still. Is it just the lack of urgency or will that they aren't making it more of a priority to create these planes or anything?
Yeah, partly, and partly is to do with that word technology as well. So if you look under the hood of a car from the 1940s, and look under the head of a car from just rolled off the production line today, it's very different. Yeah, My car's 25 years old, and I can fix a few things on it because I can see it. I know what things look like. But if I opened a brand new car today, it's just all computer driven, and you need a brilliant degree in whatever. You need the mechanics degree to be able to figure it all out. It's just more complicated. So making planes back in World War II, they were very basic planes basically, back then. So you could just knock them out very, very easily. And he could fire them very, very reasonably easily as well. Whereas today, I know things are supposed to be a bit less complicated, to fly and stuff like that, and computers are helping you, but they're a hell of a lot more complicated, to fly and maintain, and stuff like that. Scouts, you're going to have something to say on this. I saw you shoot up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to step away, so I missed the earlier conversation. But one of the challenges is that it's quite expensive just to set up and expand an assembly line of something as sophisticated as a Gripen. And also, in addition to that, you have other people that want it. They're not building it just for Ukraine. There's a lot of people that want it, especially in light of the United States now looking a little bit less reliable. People are going to be putting in a lot more orders, I think, for it. And so I think that all of that will have to shake out, and probably in the next year we'll know more. But I think it's going to be a while. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, time frame wise, I think it's going to be 2 years, probably 3 years. So I think the war's going to be over in 2027, and I think that obviously there's going to be, so there's the war. There's people say the war's not going to end on the battlefield, and it's not. Wars always end diplomatically, because you can win on the battlefield, but then you're going to have talks afterwards on what the political settlement is, what the reparations are going to be, all this kind of stuff, and that boils down to diplomacy and politics and stuff like that. So the final thing is going to be, it's always diplomacy. Yes, it can get a big push from what happens on the battlefield, but the final thing is politicians talking and deciding kind of how it's going to end. Brad.
Yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. I don't see this thing going to a diplomatic settlement, man, to be honest with you. I think we're going to be sitting in the hot seat for this one for at least the next 2 or 3 years. And I think, to be quite honest with you, the only way this thing's going to go down, like it's going to end, is when the Russians get the hell out of here. Because the Ukrainians aren't going to give up any of their land. That's not going to happen. And they're just going to keep fighting until, they don't have an option, which I don't even know what the conditions for that would be, my man. But, yeah, I mean, it's just, there's too many things, on both sides to get to a political settlement. And, especially with the United States and these other countries stepping up and getting in the mix too. And it's just a quagmire. It's a mess. So I just don't know if there's going to be a diplomatic solution or not, my man.
I mean, by diplomatic and by political, I mean, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be some Russian general ordering his troops out. Ultimately, it'll be some politician in Russia, either Putin or probably someone other than Putin, ordering their general to order his troops out. And that means it's a political and diplomatic settlement. There's not going to be generals sitting around a table discussing war reparations. It's going to be politicians and diplomats discussing war reparations and stuff like that. So the battlefield stuff, yes, it is all generals and military folk and stuff like that. But all the other stuff around it, the peace treaty, the surrender document and all that kind of stuff is going to be done by diplomats and politicians. Does that make sense, Brad, or have I got that wrong, do you think? Because that's kind of what happened in World War II.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I get what you're saying about that. I'm just saying, it's going to be a long time. We're going to be fighting this thing for quite a while, I believe. And, I'll just be honest with you. I was sitting, we were out training last week, And I went into like the instructor shack, and I know we're just talking to the Ukrainian guys or whatever. And one of the guys, he asked me, he said, "Hey Brad, or hey Top, when's the war going to be over?" You know, and I said, "I don't know, man. I don't know when it's going to be over." And he's like, "Well," and I told him, I was like, "We just have to keep fighting, man. We don't have a choice. Like it can't go any other way." And the guy said to me, he said, "I'm tired. We're tired of fighting this thing. This guy I'm talking to right now, or talking about, he's been in the army for like 3 years now." But that's the big thing that they're saying is like, we're tired. And I know the Russians are tired too. Everybody's tired, but it's going to be a difficult situation, for all of us, I believe, these next couple of years. So there you go, bud.
Yeah. Cheers. And I do think the economic pressure on Russia is going to tell eventually. And then from a logistics point of view, even morale as well, but morale's going to get pretty low for the Russians for it to mean anything to them. But everything together is going to help. Obviously, if Ukraine had more stuff, to be able to, field on the battlefield, that would help a hell of a lot. If the sanctions were harsher and harsher, than they are now, that would help as well. So anything more is going to, make the war shorter. It just depends, is there going to be more stuff coming? And with Ukraine, upping its economic output of military stuff, that helps shorten the war. But yeah, so I'm being a bit too optimistic with 2027 then. I'm thinking 2027, sometime in 2027, it's gonna, all those things, are going to cause the Russians to say, fuck it, we're off. Or do you think it's going to be 2028, maybe 2029, Brad?
I think it's going to be a lot later. But in order for this to end successfully, for all parties, Russia's just got to stop. They're going to have to stop sooner or later. And, look, I say it like this. And when people ask me this question, I answer it the same way. Russia's already lost this war. It's just like when they went into Afghanistan back in the 80s. They already lost the war by year 5. They were just buying for time, trying to figure out the best way to solve the problem or the solution. And, they withdrawed from Afghanistan completely. Russians are in the same position right now. They've already lost this war. They already know they've lost this war, and they're just looking for an exit strategy. But the problem is that they've entrenched themselves so deep that, politically, it would be an end to Putin if he just pulled his troops out of here. Basically, he lose his regime at that point. And I don't know, maybe he might fall down a couple steps or fall out a window or something. I don't know. But, that's just how I feel about that. But
Yeah, no, I agree. We'll go to scouts in a second. And I agree. And that's why I think it is going to be a political solution to this. Something like that. Something like Putin leaving and somebody less bad than Putin coming in and saying, right, that's it. That was Putin's war. It's not ours. We're withdrawing. Or, my favorite actually, which my other blue sky hope is for the breakup of the Russian Federation, similar to the, Soviet Union breaking up, but a breakup of the Russian Federation. If not a complete civil war, then at least some, oblasts and whatever, at least, resource-rich oblasts saying, you know what, we're going our separate ways, just like the former, Soviet bloc countries, went, independent and stuff like that, because that would screw Russia up as well. Divide and conquer, basically. And that would be a political thing as well. So that's my thoughts. Economic collapse, internal Russian Federation unrest leading to a breakup in part of the Russian Federation, and then trying to figure it out, themselves, whilst paying reparations. Those oblasts and whatever that do, if they do secede from the Russian Federation, but they kind of, sent men and material, to the war, they need to pay up as well. They just shouldn't get off scot-free, just because they broke up from the Russian Federations. But that's how I think it's going to end in a way. And I hope it's 2027, but it's probably going to be Maybe it's going to be longer. Bugger. Scouts, and then I'll just bring Juicy up. Scouts.
I don't think that it's just a binary solution, either diplomacy or military defeat. I think, for example, in Liberia in 2007, there was a civil war that went on, and the only reason that war stopped, they still had plenty of ammunition. They still had plenty of kids they were taking out of villages and giving drugs to, giving weapons to. The only reason that war stopped is because they had already cleaned out all the animals in the woods for food. There's no more food left. And I'm not trying to be bleak here. I'm just trying to say that's an illustration of what comes to mind for a war to stop. There are other reasons and ways. If Russia can no longer afford the war, then they will find some way to slink back into their hole. And I don't know what that looks like, but I think that it's really important for the progress of the war that we track the deep attacks on the economy of Russia that's happening while they're holding in a front. And that's the main thing that'll happen. And someday the old Russian men will walk home. And that's what I think. Don't know when that's going to happen. I think it'll be a surprise to everybody when it's finally over. And it may get quiet this winter, but it may be a little while. And that's what we can all pray for here. So that's all I got on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hoping back in the October, I had a little rowette with somebody on Maria Report, and she apparently was a Russian expert, and I was talking about trying to foment a little bit of secession from some Russian oblasts, kind of overtly, not covertly like the CIA would do, but basically the West say, listen, Russian oblasts, if you secede from the Russian Federation, we're going to help you out, yeah? But if you don't secede from the Russian Federation, yeah, and you kind of, in effect, help the Russian Federation in Ukraine, you're going to go down with the Russian Federation. So you got a choice. So what do you want to do? And I got told to shut up, basically. Can't do that. Can't be talking about secession and stuff like that. It's internal politics and all this. And it's like, well, that's exactly what's required, is people dangling that carrot of secede versus the stick of, oh, you're going to go down with Russia. What do you want to do? And yeah, basically, and it hasn't really happened yet, at least not on the surface. Maybe it's been happening in the background, but I don't think so. Maybe it has, because I don't see any, I haven't heard any rumors, or I've been looking out for them as well, of any of these, oblasts, kind of saying, yeah, we're going to succeed. Maybe the odd one or two, but nothing definite. And that needs to happen. There needs to be that rumor started, and it needs to be overt as well. Just say things could be better. You want to go down that road. It could be all lovely. You could join the modern world, or if you don't, you're going to stay with the Russian Federation. You're going to go down that other route, and you're going to go down with the Russian Federation, and you're going to be a pariah forever. Which do you want for your people? Juicy, welcome.
Hi again. About the Russians and the current collapse, what they're doing. I think that we made a mistake last time when the Soviet Union was collapsing, like in 90s, that we just borrowing money for them, and that saying that, okay, get your shit together and solve your problems together. I think that we should have done like in German, like we did after the Second World War with Germans, that we were splitting them, that this is French area and this is English area or UK area and this is American area. I think the Germans, on the Western side, they were doing quite well. We were like having good Germans. We have like good economic on Germany at the moment, and we had like very increase of state of the people who were living in Germany. Of course, we didn't we didn't get that one in eastern side, but it wasn't our fault. But I think that the last collapse was handled bad way, but next collapse we should handle the right way. That is all what I have to say.
Yeah, I fully agree as well. That's part of the carrot. Yeah, so yeah, as well as you secede from the Russian Federation, that makes you an independent state. But you're going to be an independent state that needs to kind of do things right, and we can help you with that because, well, we're democracies. We're used to having institutions and stuff like that. So we'll send technocrats over to you and help you build up your institutions and stuff like that to help you to become a proper state, with proper governance and all this kind of stuff. Obviously for those, oblasts which have got like mineral resources and stuff like that, they can fund it with those resources, which would be theirs. Obviously part of those resources would have to be paid to, Ukraine in reparations. They do owe, because they are sending troops and munitions and stuff like that, and have been over the past 3.5 years. So they're not going to get off scot-free, just if they concede all your sins are forgiven. No. Those men and women and people who have supported the Putin regime need to be held to account. It's not just a clean card. However, there is a path out of what's going to happen to Muscovy. Let's call it Muscovy. They're screwed, but the other ones, especially the ones in the Far East, or the ones in Central Asia and other ones as well, and especially like Siberia and stuff like that, which have got resources and stuff like that. They do have money in the ground, as it were, to be able to support themselves and trade on the markets going forward, and to do to make a life for themselves outside the Russian Federation. But they do need a little bit of help. Otherwise they'll just end up somewhere like Chechnya or something like that. They'll just end up like warlordy states and it'll be a bit of a nightmare. So it's a kind of we'll help you help yourselves, but you got to pay your reparations and pay your dues for what you have done. What are your thoughts on that, Juicy and Scott? Let's go to Juicy first and then maybe Scouts.
Yeah, you sure know how to talk about a lot about. Yeah, but anyway, but yeah, I totally agree. But we have to find a kind of solution. I think that the solutions won't be accepted in Russian, but we have to make it kind of like to be true. It's not up to them. We have to show that we have the solution and we're gonna give you the medicine. We are gonna give the Russians the medicines what they are needing. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a job for like the diplomats and the paper pushers and the blue sky thinkers to try and foment a little bit of unrest and a little bit of secession. But meanwhile, the rest of us, especially the military types and everyone else, we've got to just continue supporting Ukraine economically, militarily, diplomatically in that way. Keep eyes on the prize, as it were, helping Ukraine. And it'd be a nice to have if these other things happened, if the Russian Federation broke up and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, immediate problem is getting stuff to Ukraine to fight off the Russians and get them to a stage where they can push them back. So that's always been the problem in the whole of this full scale invasion is trying to get the Ukrainians what they're asking for and what they need to defend themselves, basically. All the other stuff is a cherry on the cake, icing on the cake type of stuff in the future. So a little bit of blue sky thinking and stuff like that from us at the moment, GC. But it's just we're covering a lot of topics today. I like covering a lot of topics. Scouts.
I like the idea that you brought up about, let me put it this way. So behind the scenes discussions with other members of the Russian Federation might be a useful strategy. I'm just thinking, for example, if the longer that Ukraine goes and the longer this war drags out, the more hope all the other uh, the other countries that are sort of vassal states of Russia get hope. Okay, and the more hope they get, there may be an opportunity to join together in some sort of, the UK. What do they call it in the UK? You have a former colony association of
Commonwealth.
Commonwealth. That's correct. Canada's in it. There's a bunch. I don't want to compare, but there is something to be said to be a former Soviet or Russian Federation state that people have in common, that they might be able to join together either economically or to have some discussion. And hopefully, if I'm working on diplomacy, that there would be some kind of background work on this, that they'd be working on over time, to at least identify the people to have discussions with about this, so that when the time comes and Russia runs out of the ability to fight the war, this can be put on the fast track. That's when I heard you discuss it, Sir Shaggy. That's the first time I'd heard that kind of idea. I think that's a useful idea, and you might even include some of the Baltic. Interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, it was October 2022. I thought of this, and I tried to identify the little some groups. And now a lot of these, obviously, because it's the Russian Federation, a lot of these groups are very, very underground. So they're not out in the open in the streets marching and stuff like that. They're very, very underground. They're very small, and a lot of them are not actually in Russia. They're kind of people who used to live in those countries, which remember their traditions and their history. So kind of diaspora. I won't call them diaspora Russians. Diaspora Oblastians, let's call them that. So from these places who would love to have their old homelands back, be not part of the Russian Federation, but basically have no power and stuff like that. So it's kind of a very grassroots thing, but just getting the word out. And I didn't see any problem with kind of fomenting a little bit of this. And doing it openly as well, so it's not like all skullduggeries that people can point the finger and go, oh, that's just regime change again, like Iraq and all this. No. Fully just being independent. If you want to be independent, we can help you be independent. Just leave the Russian Federation to themselves, to their own problems. Just get out of the Russian Federation, or you're going to go down with them. That was basically the line: get out or go down. Juicy.
Yeah, I think that it's not a question how long Ukraine war can handle. I think that thinking about that kind of like thunderstruck, what happens in Georgia and every other nation when the Ukraine declares winning on war against Russia, when the Russian is beaten in Ukraine, that is something that will change the thing in Russian perspective, Russian, in Georgia, in Moldova, and whatever, Transnistria, it's going to change the world, and Ukraine really can beat the Russia, and when that is coming, when that is really coming to believe, when people are understanding that the Ukraine can beat the Russia, that is something that will change the tectons. That is really, really big difference at the moment.
Yeah, one of the big things I've been looking for is Russian internal security. So Russia's got two problems at the moment. One is trying to beat Ukraine with what it's got, and two is trying to keep itself together as well, i.e., keep its internal security and its totalitarian regime in charge of all its territories and stuff like that, or all its current territories. So I've been looking for It's looking at its internal security forces to see if it's got like lots of vacancies and it's starting to have problems with internal security. And it has got a lot of vacancies in the Rosguardia and all those kind of things. So I've been looking to see whether they're going to be pulling men from the front lines or not sending as many men to the front lines because they've got to look after their own internal security thing. Because for them, internal security's a big problem. If they're going to break up as a country, then they're not going to be able to prosecute the war. Juicy, I've still got some more thoughts on this, but let's go to you first. Juicy.
Yeah, I think that the Russian is the nation which has gone a couple of bridges too far. So in centuries, it has been backed up of, Genghis Khans and whatever we have done, but now it's not sustainable anymore. And it hasn't been sustainable in fucking centuries. But for some reason, for some, good hope with something and, Second World War, we didn't have any allies in the East, and we thought that it could be good to have an ally from the East in the Second War against Hitler. But not at the moment, we don't have a reason to have a Russia in a bordering Europe anymore. And we have to understand that Russia is a nation that has gone beyond the bridges, beyond that they are actually too far. It had to be a little country somewhere else that not bordering Europe anymore. And we're gonna see some kind of revolution, and the revolution is not gonna be the easiest one, but that is what we're gonna see.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of revolution, whether it's a soft one or a bloody one. There's going to have to be one of them. But back onto my internal security thought and the things I've been looking for. So the last couple of weeks, something very interesting has happened. So the Russians have decided they're going to be calling up some reservists and doing conscription in a slightly different way, and using conscripts and whatever to protect their critical infrastructure. Now, normally you'd expect kind of the internal security forces like the Oman or the Rosguardia and things like that, basically the Russian police, to do that kind of stuff. But because the Russian police have gone down in manpower so much because, quite a lot of them decided to join the army to try and earn more money and then got killed. And basically they're kind of I think it's about 170,000 short, of in effect Russian police to help protect these places and do their internal security. So now they're going to be using conscripts for that kind of stuff. So this kind of shows that they are worried about an internal security problem, as well as trying to find manpower to fight in Ukraine, to fight their illegal aggression in Ukraine. They're also worrying about their own internal security as well. So they come up with this kind of solution, which I don't think is it's a great solution from our point of view, because there's just going to be more corruption there, and you're going to have people who are not really police, who are just kind of conscripts, in charge and pissing off the local population even more and trying to extort them and things like that. So this is kind of what I've been looking for. It's taken a hell of a lot longer than I thought it would, to happen, but then the Russians seem to be quite good at muddling through the fuckers, in this respect. But yeah, this is kind of this part of this very, 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 very slow breakdown of internal Russian security. They obviously there's sabotage and stuff like that going on. And as prices rise and people's wages fall and electricity and gas and petrol and all the kind of basics start getting harder and harder to get, this is going to start fomenting more and more and more problems, and coupled with Ukraine getting stronger and stronger on the battlefield and learning lessons, some lessons learning them the good way, i.e. what works first worked well. Some lessons obviously kind of learned the hard way. And shit, that didn't work. Let's try something else. But gradually, over time, getting stronger and stronger, as Brad would talk to as well. They have innovated a hell of a lot. They've definitely got a long range solutions in place. The Flamingo, they did have a slight technical problem in production. That's why President Zelensky came out yesterday or the day before, saying that instead of the end of October now for 7 a week or 7 a day produced, that's been pushed back to the end of this year, which it was originally. Actually, it was originally supposed to be the start of October. It was going to be 7 a day to be able to produce, and then they pushed it back to the end of the year, and then they brought it forward to the end of October, and now they pushed it back again to the end of the year. So it's back to where I basically thought it was going to be. The end of the year, 7 of those flamingos a day, plus drone production up and all that kind of stuff. But Ukraine are basically building up its defense industry, even though it is in the middle of a war, and building up a lot of other experiences and getting more people trained with people like Brad doing it and stuff like that. So they are improving a lot in that area. Whereas in Russia, well, training obviously went down the pan. A lot of the trainers in Russia got sent to the front lines, so there was no one to train. Even if they gave them enough time to train, they haven't really got the equipment that they used to have as well. They're just basically meat waves. They do have some units which are good, and some men in some of those units who are very, very good and have lasted throughout the war. And you got to be kind of good to last throughout the war. But a lot of it, from what I've heard from David D. Space, which I can see is on now actually, he started a bit early. But yeah, they're not doing great. There's apparently an advantage they have got a manpower advantage in Pokrovsk. Reports are between 5-1 and 8-1 in Pokrovsk. But Ukraine has learnt a lot of lessons from Bakhmut and from Adrivka and from a lot of other places as well, from people like Brad who train them in NATO tactics and stuff like that. So they've got better over time as well, whereas the Russians have learned some things. They've definitely learned how to use drones and some things like that, but in other areas they're still stuck in the command mentality of everything going from the top all the way down. They're not very agile. They're very waterfall. So in business terms, you've got agile methodology and you've got waterfall methodology, and Russia is still very waterfall. It all falls down from the top, from orders and stuff like that. Whereas agile is you just kind of give a lot more decision-making powers to people lower down in the chain, so they can make more operational decisions. Brad, can you talk about this a little bit if you're listening? The difference between how Ukraine are now commanding troops and smaller units in Ukraine are making decisions compared to the Russian side, if you're there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so Ukrainians are getting a lot better at what we call battlefield command and control. We also call this a military decision-making process, or MDMP. So they're going to more of a like NATO or a Western Army style of organization. They've already talked about doing the corps. So the Army corps, they're going to put those together, and they've already been doing that, and restructuring the Army so that it's much better for command and control. And also, there's a big initiative for non-commissioned officers. So like that's your sergeants, corporals, and all that stuff. In any Western Army, like a sergeant or a corporal is a lot of decision-making process. They can change the course of the battle by making small decisions and be flexible. So the Ukrainians are working on that. Also, in regards to the Russians, the Russians aren't really doing that. And the problem with the Russians is they don't really have a non-commissioned officer corps anymore. Most of the Russian sergeants that had any experience, and also junior officers, by the way, they're gone. And, there was a joke going around I guess the coffee room or whatever you want to call it. It's, we're making coffee and tea and stuff. And some of the guys were like, "Hey, how do you become a Russian sergeant?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "How?" He said, "He survived 9 days on the battlefield." So, uh, you know, that's, hey, that's a running joke, but it's true, and, that's the thing that we're seeing here. And I'll tell you one thing about Russian planning. They're not flexible at all. When they get a battle order, they basically just salute back. They'll be like, "Hey, take these 100 guys and these 18 vehicles, and I want you to go straight down this route, no deviation." There's no flexibility in tactical planning with this stuff. And to be quite honest with you, and this happens on both sides too. I'm not going to say it's just a Russian thing. But they're doing command and control where they got drones up in the air and they're telling these guys, "Hey, a brigade commander," which is weird, is telling like a soldier or a sergeant or somebody, "Hey, throw a grenade 20 meters to the right and then walk 20 feet forward," or something like that. Like it's a video game because they're looking at them through a screen. So the big thing about this is that, I guess the way I can cap this off, Ukraine is learning very quickly how to be adaptive on the battlefield and also be flexible with command and control. And, they're slowly indoctrinating the NATO and Western style philosophy. And there's one other thing to that as well. A lot of these senior Ukrainian commanders are old. I don't use the Soviet word or stuff like that. I say post or pre-Cold War army guys, and they still have that mentality. And until those guys retire or kind of move on, and the young blood can actually take over, we're going to see a lot of this pre Cold War mentality. So, just my saying on that. If there's any other questions on that, just let me know.
Yeah, maybe I'd sum that up by you can't teach old generals new tricks. Might sum that one up a little bit, Brad. The kind of what you've learned in your youth kind of sticks with you throughout your adulthood. So I from my non-military angle, I used to kind of chuckle a little bit because right at the start of the war, you'd have all these military types coming up saying this was going to happen, that was going to happen, blah 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 blah, and then those kind of things didn't happen because these military types were NATO military types, and what they were saying were going to happen and forecasting was going to happen was based on what NATO would do, not what Russia would do or not what Ukraine would do, which is very different than what NATO forces would do, and therefore me not being trained, not being brainwashed in effect in the NATO way of doing things, or brainwashed in effect in the Russian way of doing things, just seeing things, just looking at the information. I sometimes found myself a little bit better at predicting than some of the military guys. Not on everything, obviously, but just some of the things. And it made me think, and it's a little bit like that as well. And what I've seemed to have, what I've gleaned is that yes, there is still kind of the ex-Soviet way of doing things to some degree. But it's getting more and more good NATO ideas and things that work from NATO and stuff like that. The good from NATO ideas, NATO planning and stuff like that is slowly working its way in. And from what I understand, it's working its way in mainly through the younger commanders as well, which due to some of the maybe older commanders either retiring and finishing their service, or maybe for kinetic reasons and stuff like that, to them just being promoted internally. They're bringing more of the new ideas, the more new NATO ideas that they've picked up because they weren't necessarily in the army or trained in old Soviet ways. They've been trained more in NATO ways. So there's more NATO-y type stuff and tactics and stuff coming into the Ukrainian army from people like that. Would that be kind of accurate, or have I got that completely wrong, Brett?
No, that's 100% accurate. And the thing is, you're right about the younger guys. The younger lieutenants, platoon leaders, company commanders, those guys, like captains and stuff. They're coming up with this new training and philosophies and the way to fight. Uh, like you just stated, most of this older school, older generation type guys, like your some brigade commanders, and some of the guys in the general staff. It's not because they don't want to change. It's because of what you just said. Uh, they've grown up with that kind of style, of leadership and the military system and the structure and all that stuff. Even when we train guys, sometimes, when I'm working with these brigade commanders and stuff, I have to convince these guys that like a lot of the stuff that we do is like worthwhile, because they'll be like, oh, well, that's not the Soviet way, or that's not the way that we used to do it, or whatever. Like, this is that new NATO stuff, or this Western Army stuff. I don't agree with it. And then it's usually like colonels and stuff to say that. But I have to prove to them, this stuff works. And usually when I prove it to them, the guys are pretty receptive about it, and they're like, oh yeah, that's great. That's great. I didn't really think about it that way, or, this stuff works really good. But, yeah, that's just how it is, bud.
Yeah, teaching that old dog new tricks type thing. I mean, you can a little bit, but yeah, it is quite difficult. And definitely, if you give a dog a bone, i.e., give him a win and show that it does work, then yeah, the doggy's going to be kind of more interested in doing that again, as it were. So, yeah, it seems to me that I mean, there is a flip side of that actually. The flip side being that these Ukrainian kind of higher ups, as I'll call them, know how the Russians work, because, well, that's what both sides kind of got taught back in the day, the same kind of doctrine back in the day. So they know the Russian tactics really, really, really well, because they were trained in them, same as the Russians were trained in them as well. So they got an advantage there. You can guess what your enemy is going to do if you've been trained in the same tactics as your enemy. However, the Ukrainians now also have this added people experience and information from people like you, who can say, well, yes, there's that way you've done things, but here's an actually slightly improved way of doing it, maybe operationally or tactically, on the ground as well. So that's where the Ukrainians, I think, have got an advantage. And the more tips and tricks they learn from the NATO best practices, as it were, melded with knowing kind of how the Russians are going to operate, from knowing those type of plans and how they normally do things, then you can find holes in the Russian plans, and then deploy kind of more NATO-y tactics, or even some kind of Russian NATO tactics to get in there, to get that comparative advantage. Does that make sense, Brad?
Yeah, you got to have a hybrid of both. And even when we're teaching guys out here, we're not just teaching like NATO tactics. I teach kind of a hybrid of both Ukrainian and NATO tactics kind of put together. Cause some things work out here, with tactics and procedures, and some things don't. You have to kind of modify things. And then also you got to think about, with training, the enemy, tactics, techniques, and procedures, they change about every 90 days. The enemy will do different things. They'll learn from us. They'll make modifications and changes to their training, and we have to do the same thing. So that's just something else as well.
Yeah, trying to keep that one step ahead. Any way you can, basically learning and then learning. And just because your enemy's doing it doesn't mean to say it's wrong. It may be the best way of doing it. And therefore, if it is, grab it with both hands and just try and find the best ways, the best tools, the best methods, the best everything, to win. Basically do everything you can to win. Laura, well, I've been yakking away for over 2 hours now, and I completely forgot to go to you every now and again. Are you still awake? Oh, maybe Laura's dropped. Laura? Are you a ghost co-host? I haven't checked my DMs for ages either. Are you still awake? Oh, you there?
Can you hear me
Oh, I can
okay?
hear you now, yeah. Oh, maybe Laura's dropped.
Can you hear me?
Are you a ghost co-host? I haven't checked my DMs for ages either. Are you still awake? Oh, you there?
Can you hear me
Oh, I can hear
okay?
you now,
Yeah, we
yeah.
got you 100%.
Oh,
I can hear you.
maybe Laura's dropped.
Can you hear me? I
I
think
can
there's a
hear
delay
myself.
on mine.
I think
No,
there is, Laura.
I think
I can
there's a
hear
delay
myself.
on mine.
I think there is, Laura. I think there's about a
Yeah,
15-second delay.
you guys are doing great. If you can hear me, it's kind of coming through as a delay for me because I had to switch something around. But no, I think I really enjoyed the discussion. Like,
I think there's about a 15-second delay.
you guys are doing great. If you can hear me, it's kind of coming through as a delay for me because I had to switch something around. But no, I think I really enjoyed the discussion. Like,
I might boot her. I think I'm going to boot Laura and then bring her back up again. So Laura, in fact, Laura, you leg it when you get this message in about 15 seconds, and you go
I'm
down, and
gonna.
I'll bring you
I'm
back
gonna.
up. I think I'm going to boot Laura and then bring her back up again.
That's a good
So
idea.
Laura. Oh dear, oh dear. What? Oh, she's gone anyway. Oh, there we go. That was quite amusing. I found that quite, and I haven't heard a delay that long before. I could hear myself, I could hear Laura, and I could hear what I was saying 15 seconds before, which is quite amusing, quite amusing. Oh, she's still on my screen. Right, everybody. I realised a little while ago that, I was trying not to do overlapping spaces, but David D normally comes on at 8 o'clock at night my time, which was 10 minutes ago, but he came on a bit earlier today. I don't know why. So I've noticed we've had a little bit of quite a big drop off in listeners because obviously everyone's going over to him to listen to military stuff and whatever, and I do as well. Sometimes I co-host over there. So I was going to try and bring Laura up again to say goodbyes. There she is. Got her. So we'll close this space down with. It's been a really interesting conversation. PFI's given me thumbs down, whatever, but I want to listen to some military stuff. I'm going to try and bring Laura up. Are you up, Laura? Did I get you up? Or not? Are you a ghost co-host? Maybe I should just remove you from there to see if I can bring you up. So try that again, Laura, if you're listening. Oh, hang on. I got a request. Oh, there she is. Oh. I think we're having technical problems, folks. Laura, I can see you on the speaker panel now. Are you there? No, I can see you connecting again. Anyway, all right then. Okay, what I might do then is hand it over to the panel. Brad or Mark or Scouts, any final thoughts before we wind things up a little bit, which will try and give me a couple of seconds to try and bring Laura up. Let's try that again.
No, I think everything's okay. Yep. I just need to have a discussion with you and your dad, sir.
All right. Well, when I get off here, I'll give you a call, and we can go through that. Laura, I can see you requesting. Oh, maybe you're up now. Testing, Laura. 1, 2, 3. No, she's gone to listener again. She's got problems. Okay, I'm just going to, I'll wind the space up then. So, yeah, we got, I'll try and come on tomorrow. I've been looking at Volue Radio's kind of, timeline to see when they're scheduling stuff. And I haven't looked at, what I normally do is look at Space's dashboard. The Space's dashboard, you can put somebody's handle in there and it tells you what spaces they've hosted or what they've co-hosted or what they've been listening to, and any kind of scheduled spaces that people have scheduled, funny enough, come up there as well. And so I'm trying not to do overlappy spaces. So I'm keeping an eye on the various ones, say David D or Bama or Volley Radio or any of the other ones, to see when they have got some spaces scheduled. And if they have, then I'll try not to, I won't overlap them. But if there's nothing there, which there wasn't today when I looked, and still hasn't been anything there for Volley Radio, for any future spaces, if there's nothing there, well, I'm in there. I'm gonna grab a, 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours, normally starting, about 6 o'clock. Let's do it in Kyiv time, about 6 o'clock Kyiv time, probably the earliest, going all the way through till maybe 10 o'clock, which is when David D normally starts, although he started a bit earlier today. So maybe a 4 hour, space at the kind of longest, maybe a 2 hour space from 8 o'clock Kyiv until 10 o'clock Kyiv time, is a small one. I don't want to be doing spaces smaller than 2 hours because, well, they're just too small. By the time I've got myself all worked up and gone through a few things, it's time to go. And I'm kind of used to doing longer spaces, to be frank, so we can get into quite a few topics. I did have loads of things to talk about today, but we talked about two things, of all the things I was going to talk about. But anyway, I just need a longer space, and I think 4 hours. 4 hours for Shaggy to get through all my stuff. Laura, I still can't see any requests from you. Tried to bring you up a few times. I just saw you wave from down there and listen, so I'm guessing you're having technical problems. So I'm gonna say goodbye on your behalf. And yeah, there we go. Love you. I got a love from you. So that'll do. Oh, hang on. I can see a request now. Well, let me try one more time then, Laura, to try and bring you up. So press approve there. So it says to me on my phone that you're still listening. This is not happening, Laura. You got technical difficulties. You got Twitter box, basically. I think it's because I talk for too long. But tomorrow we'll be back on. We'll come back on tomorrow if Laura's available. I'll sort that out and maybe do one on Thursday. I'm going to try and start doing these a little bit more regularly as well, around about this time. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Volley Radio normally have something on. I think they normally have Hybrid Warfare on today, and they've got Decoding Trolls on tomorrow for a couple of hours. But the rest of the time, at this time of the day, there isn't really much until David D comes on from when Mockers normally comes on and finishes in the morning, and maybe Will and Joanna finish in their morning, which is my morning anyway. There's nothing really on the whole afternoon from a pro-Ukrainian point of view that I can see. PFI occasionally does. I can see some public spaces he does, but there's nothing really scheduled. So I'm going to start doing maybe some more scheduled stuff. So keep an eye on my timeline and Laura's timeline if you can follow both of us. My account is deboosted, so sometimes notifications don't come through and all that because, I was basically bonking too much back in 2022. So it's permanently deboosted, which is a bit rubbish, but it is what it is. And until we get Tryzub Radio's account back up again, from Twitter, well, it's going to be on here, before I decide what I'm going to do. I'm giving Twitter a bit more time to try and answer the appeals. 2 appeals have gone in now. So if you ever see a post, from me occasionally, every day I'm going to be putting out a post, which is going to be tagging support and tagging premium, and tagging Elon as well. So if you can quote tweet that, rather than retweet it. If you retweet it, then you'll end up, that post won't get as much reach because it'll inherit the same deboosting that my account has. This is according to Grok. But if you quote tweet it, that means you don't inherit my deboosting, you just have whatever your account has. So if your account isn't deboosting, then it'll get the reach and whatever your posts normally do. So quote tweeting doesn't inherit any deboosting, whereas retweeting does. So that's why I've been DMing people when they've been DMing one of my Tryzub Radio get it unsuspended posts. I've been DMing them in the background, asking people to either create their own post based on mine, but maybe change the words a little bit, or just quote tweet it with something in there, and that hopefully will get some more reach and hopefully catch the eye of some Twitter moderator or whatever they are. Hopefully a human, and hopefully a human who's not pro-Russian. But the account Tryzub Radio has been suspended longer than it's been active now. I think it was active about 6 days, and it's been suspended for about 10. So that's kind of ironic. So it's either died or it's having a rest. But yeah, I'll give it another week or so, trying to get Twitter to do something. And if not, then it's going to have to be plan B or plan C or plan D. I have 3 different types of plans. So we'll see. But plan A is trying to get Tryzub Radio back up because, well, quite frankly, I like the name. And the other thing, I quite like the handle as well, because I've got the handle in all the other socials, and I don't want to have to think of a new one and go through that process again, because it took me a week. So with that, I'm going to say, Slava Ukraini, Heroem Slava, Slava Nazi, Smert Voraham, scary hippopotamus, and close the space down without being prepared to close the space down. So yeah, check out my timeline. I'll pin the tweet on my timeline and when the next scheduled space is going to be, after consultations with the silent Laura, who's having technical difficulties coming up. And thanks, Brad. Thanks, Scott. Oh, Scott, Scouts. I can see your hand up.
I'm sorry, I meant to trying to give you applause there. Hit the wrong button. I apologize. Talk to you later.
All right, thanks very much. Cheers, and cheers, Mark, as well, for your gripping question. Hopefully I answered that one to the best of my ability. Gripping. I'd love to see Grippins in Ukraine. Grippins in Ukraine, President Zelensky did say next year, and I do think there's going to be some next year, but as well, on top of that 150, brand new ENFs, Sweden does have some, between 10 and 15 D and E's, or C and D's. I forget the letter anyway. I think it's C and D's, isn't it? That they could refurbish a little bit and could get to Ukraine next year. And they're the ones I hope are going to be coming to Ukraine next year. Now, obviously, when I'm saying next year, I always think by the end of next year. Don't never think they're going to arrive the 1st of January. Otherwise, you're going to be sat there, disappointed. Let's try it one more time then, Laura. Let's try it one more time to bring you up. Let me try it from my laptop. There we go. So clicked. Let's see if we can at least bring you up to speaker to say something. Speaker. Oh, you look as though you're in speaker on my phone. And you look as though you got a microphone button as well. Go for it, Laura.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me? I'm so sorry, everyone. That was awful. Now I can hear myself too, but I'm so sorry. I should have picked up what was happening. I think part of that was having to do with 2 devices, but I really enjoyed what everyone said. I definitely had more questions for people too, so I'd love for people to come back and continue the discussion.
Brilliant. Well, we'll have a thought. Are you available tomorrow then, Laura? Might as well do this on air. See if you are.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Cool. All right. Well, so we will have a space tomorrow. Should we have a long? We'll maybe have a long one then. Although not Maria Report, Volley Radio are on. I'll have a think about it, see if they're definitely on or not. If there's nothing on, if I don't see anything on Space's dashboard, schedule for Volley Radio tomorrow, I'll do a long space. And if I do see something, then I'll just do a short 2-hour one. But keep an eye on keep an eye on my timeline or Laura's timeline. Don't bother trying with Tryzub Radio's timeline because you won't see anything because, well, it's suspended, isn't it? Woo. And then we'll come back tomorrow, and do something else and talk about some more things. There we go. Laura, goodbye. Have a great afternoon where you are, and everyone else have a great afternoon, evening or morning if you're on the other side of the world in Australia, and all that kind of stuff. So catch you later. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank